So, here's some popular explanations regarding these verses. And these are from Judah. These are not from, I'm going to go over 5 of them. And let's just take turns reading these. These are 5 different explanations about this passage, about why there's a sin offering. Somebody read this first one.
The offerings recall the sin of Eve in Eden and her punishment from God, that I will make your pain in childbearing very severe. With pain you will give birth to children. Okay, so they're relating this back to the fact that when Eve and Adam had sinned, her judgment was going to be that she's going to have pain in childbearing. And this was then a reminder. This is supposed to be a reminder of that. That's plausible. I'm not saying that's not it. It's possible. But that focuses on the sin. But that would explain why there would be a sin sacrifice. Somebody else read this one. Anguish
of labor may have got express ideas that were sinful, that she now knew
regrets. Further relations. And in the last 3 words? With her husband, yeah, okay. So when she's in other words, when she's in great pain. Sorry, little guy. You okay? Yeah, you're a tough guy. I can stay in my corner. When she's in the middle of her pain, she might have said, "Don't you ever touch me again," right? I know after we had our second one, Melanie said, she said, "We're not having it anymore." And because she had been so sick. She had really, kind of like what Scott's life is going through right now. It's serious stuff. It is. It's really sick. But that soon faded, and she was willing to have a third. And I'm glad we have this wonderful daughter. And then the next one. So I actually gotta get this back. I apologize. Wow. Play again. Hey, did you remember where I was? That never happens. Okay. Another popular explanation is sacrifice or a kind of ransom or relief offering for having survived the dangers of childbirth, as well as a form of prayer for a full recovery. So in other words, not really a sin, but a ransom, a purchase back for the life. Another thought is women have been intensely focused on the physical process. So in other words, while they say focus, right? Focus. Concentrate. I remember when we went to have our first one, we had it all figured out. We went to the Lamaze classes. We had everything worked out. We had Melanie's tape recorder and boombox is what it was, really. And we had some Michael W. Smith all tuned up. We were ready to go. I had the gold bag. We were booked. And we get up there, and she says, and I do my job. I got her to the hospital, right? Checked her in, got ready, pressed play. That's what she wanted. And it broke her concentration. Shut that thing off! Because the pain went just like that. What? Oh, now what am I supposed to do? So they were focusing on, a woman has to focus on the physical part. And so the thought is, well, they haven't focused on spiritual things. So maybe this is a reminder that it's time to focus on spiritual things again. It's just, again, one of the thoughts. Trying to explain this peculiar situation.
David?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, so in the sacrificial offerings, there were two offerings for sin offerings. There was one for intentional and one for unintentional sin. Now, are these relating to the intentional sin or the unintentional?
I do not know. That's a good question. Sounds like one of those rabbit trails I was going down.
That would be, a big difference right there as to what type of sin offering would be.
Well, I'll show you some of the offerings that it's comparable to in a minute.
The writer's comment is that the burnt was for atonement for people in general, and sin was for unintentional carelessness or.
Sure. Those are all things. And I would want, if it was me, I'd want the doctor to be getting on his knees and praying, getting his sins taken care of before he touched my wife. Make sure you're up to date, buddy. So yeah, there's a lot of great ideas and thoughts. The last one that I found on this was this one. That the burnt offering is like an olah, a re'iyah, an offering brought when appearing at the temple on festivals, following the injunction, do not appear before me empty-handed. The woman celebrates her ability to appear before Yahweh again at the temple. So in other words, she's been separated for 40 days or 80 days, not able to go to temple, not able to go to tabernacle or to worship with other brethren and sistren, if that's a word, probably not. And so now she gets to come again, and it's like, well, don't come empty-handed. So maybe that's one of the ideas behind it. These are all possible. I'm not saying they might all be part of it, but I do want to give you another thought today. It comes down to this. She shall be unclean 7 days. Well, that word there, unclean, let's look at what that means. It's Strong's H3930, and it is tamei. And now I didn't write this because it says tamei does not mean impure or defiled. I would have begged to differ. I think it can. I would not put it in the bind so much to say that it can't. I'd say that it can, but it doesn't necessarily have to. It can also mean a condition that prevents him from entering the tabernacle or temple, or prevents anyone. So in other words, you're in a condition in which you can't be in his presence. You can't be in his presence with his people. That's all it means. It might mean for good or for bad, but you're excused to not be in his temple is one way to look at it. You have an excuse, kind of like your hall pass, right, in school. Well, I have a hall pass. That's why I'm not in the principal's office, or that's why I'm not in class. At work, we had to get a doctor's written excuse in order to miss work when we got COVID. I had to send that in. So that was basically another reason I was tamei. In a way, I wasn't able to attend work. So let's look at that then. These are not my ideas again here. So with that thought, there was two other ideas that Judaism had concerning why the mother had to bring these offerings. One was that she was engaged in a mitzvah, exempt from others. So in other words, there's some teaching that you can't, when you have, sometimes you can do great deeds all at one time. My wife can do that. She can do a lot of different things at once. She's talking to me, emailing somebody, doing a prayer. She's praying to me or praying to Yahweh while she's dealing with me and emailing somebody and writing a thank you note to somebody else. I can't do that. She can do multiple mitzvot at once. But some thought is that you can't always do several mitzvahs at the same time. So in this case, her most important thing is to do what? For these 40 days, these 80 days? Heal. What else? Take care of the baby and bond. Bond. Yeah, this is that moment. We've read about this before. If you're there at the birth of a bunny, if you will, you could become the mother accidentally if it what's that word, attaches or something? Imprints on you. Yeah, that could happen. So she needs to be there for that time. So she is doing a greater thing by being there doing that than going to the temple. Another one is this, and that was kind of interesting. Reminders of mortality. So in other words, when you're in the temple, it's all about life. When you're in Yahweh's presence, it's all about life. And there's a lot of good thoughts about this. That things that resemble death, the smell of death, that look of death in Scripture and Torah, He doesn't want that to be any part of our being. So we don't want to be around graves. We don't want to touch a headstone if we're going to be in His presence. There's a lot of thought about that. So they're saying that when we're in His presence, then we are basically sensing immortality. We're there spiritually in His presence, and when our spirits connect, our spirits are eternal. If we're followers of Him, then the things of this world draw us away. And so he was saying things that remind us of that, like leprosy. If we read today in Torah, leprosy, death, loss of seed among men, and then birth. Birth is a reminder of our mortality. Because if there's a birth, there's going to be a death. So it's kind of an interesting explanation, I thought. And there might be some credence there. But I want to look a little bit more at a different direction. And I find it here, and this was my own studies the Father was showing to me. It was number 613 is where it kind of begins. Because this is about the Nazarite, and we were talking about similarities in the sacrifices. So in the Nazarite, this is the law of the Nazarite. When the days of the separation are fulfilled, he shall be brought to the door of the tabernacle meeting, and he shall present his offering to Yahweh, one male lamb in his first year without blemish as a burnt offering, one ewe lamb in his first year without blemish as a sin offering. Okay, let me ask you a question. If you've completed a Nazarite vow, well, you've completed it. Because remember, well, if you read the whole passage, it says just before this, if you're taking a Nazarite vow and you fail in it because you got in the presence of a dead body by accident, then you were to give turtle doves and pigeons. Thank you. Very similar, once again, and then you started over. You get a second try. He is a God of second tries. But this is for someone who's completed it. He's completed his whole Nazarite vow. Why is he giving a sin offering? See, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to consider that there was some sin that took place. And the rabbis have seen that, and I certainly see it today. So there's got to be something more. That's what I'm saying. There's something more here. What is this something more? And this is where I want to go with this. And this is probably to the other extreme. But I've been known to be an extremist. So what do the Nazarite and the woman that has just given birth have in common?
The sacrifice? The
sacrifices, for sure. What else? What else do they have in common?
Long hair?
Could be. That's a good one.
There's no, it is not advised for a pregnant woman or a nursing mother to take alcohol.
It's true. That's true. That's the thing too. And maybe I'm kind of stressing you here. I'm doing a David here. I'll just ask you a blunt question. What do you think? That is not a great answer. But let me ask you, is the Nazarite close to Yahweh?
Yeah.
The whole time he's in his Nazarite vow, he's close to Yahweh. It's basically like fasting. Same thing, when you're fasting, you're close to the Father. Your spirit's joined to His. And a Nazarite is as well. And when he ends that time, he's also coming away from Yahweh. A female giving birth, and that's what we're going to look at now. In what ways is she closer to Yahweh? And so we're going to talk about that right now. And it has to do with this. Genesis 3:3-4. Somebody read that passage.
The serpent said to the woman, "You surely will not die, for God knows that in the day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil."
Okay, so that goes right back to the garden, right? The original sin was about being like God. And maybe that's why she partook. I want to be like God. I don't know. I would rather not know evil myself. But let's move on. So that was a sin that was given. And then Isaiah says this about Satan. And this is all Satan's lie, okay? For ye have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the further sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. That's what Satan had to say. That's the lie that he peddled. So, this is what I think. And this is Davidology at its finest. Or not. I think that a woman that is giving birth, there's a similarity that she has with the father at that time. What would that be? She's bringing life into the world. She is now also a creator. And the scriptures talk about the creation being a miracle. There were several births, including Yeshua's, that were miraculous. Sarah, as well. The emphasis has always been that, and the Father can open and close wombs, the emphasis has always been that having a baby, having a child is a miracle. And even today, they don't really know how this happens. How does life begin? Where does it come from? How does it end? Does it end? All great questions. Even today, that's why they're still arguing. Well, it's a fetus. No, it's a child. It's a fetus. It's a child. We don't know. So I think that a woman that is bearing this child, she touches on an area of life that us men will never understand. And I don't think it's a sin. It's not a sinful thing. She's just becoming, the Father, for that moment, she is a creator. And it might take 40 days. It might take 80 days for her to come down from that spiritual or emotional or intellectual high. We just read that basically there's only room for one creator. There's not room for two. So it may be he is saying, hey, yes, I want you to be in my presence. Yes, you need to take care of the child. But you're excused until you're mortal again. Until you're like your husband. He can come in the meantime because he's just mere man, but you are something right now. So just chill out and take a break. And I'll see you when the glory fades. So is it about sin? I don't think it's about sin. Is it about glory? It might be about glory. And about the glory that needs to fade. If that's true, it's just one of the thoughts. But if that's true, how much different is that idea about a woman's glory being so great that she has to not be in his presence until the glory has dwindled? Compared to, well, there's some sin that she might have spoken or said or done, or the child was created in sin. I mean, there's scriptural examples for some of that too, but it's really messing with your mind that she would be at a spiritual high and have to come down.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yeah.
Do you think maybe it's like a spiritual high? Maybe you said that, but maybe the sin offering is for the sins that the woman and the Nazarite will commit after, because maybe they were like holy at that moment.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Okay. Well, that fits with the idea, what you're saying of the Nazarite had this closeness with the Father, and now he's going to end that. Now, Melanie and I had this fast, and I've talked about it before. We did a 40-day fast, and we learned, my goodness, we learned a lot at the time. But at the conclusion of the fast, I remember weeping. I wept because we weren't like that anymore, and I could feel it. Not her and I, me and the Father. I felt that separation. I moved away from that glory room to some small degree, but it was enough to mess with me. So yeah, it could be, hey, let's have a sin sacrifice now, because you're going to be immortal again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, well, let's go to, anyways, the reason I want to mention that is that basically our minds are something, that's where I'm going with this. Our minds are amazing. My mind is less amazing than it used to be. I'm still alert enough to know that. But I can't remember near as much as I used to. But we are created in His image, and what we do with our minds is incredible. And He's built in us. I talked about emotions early on, and I've talked about healing at the last meeting, I believe. But there's a lot going on in our minds, and our minds control so much of what we believe. It's not just our hearts, our minds too. So there's something called neural pathways in here. That's actually I used a picture like this in one of my. I have a document at work. It has the background is all these synapses, mental images, because I use this document to help me remember things. And I ended up copying it up, and the whole company uses it, so it works out really well. But neural pathways, they're basically thought patterns, and if I could use one, so this is a weak one here, right? So that would be considered a weak one, whereas this is a stronger one. And what they're saying basically is that the more you think something, the easier it is to think those things. And the less often you think something, then the less frequently you might even forget. But that's why we're supposed to study the Word. And that's why we're supposed to be here today, and we're supposed to be studying His Word. It's because the more often we do that, the more often we will think of His Word. And we will interpret life according to His Word. Then there's something else that's related to that then with the neural pathways that we develop. It's called a cognitive bias. And it basically means mistaken reasoning based on personal experiences or preferences. So basically, if you live in a small world and you have very few experiences, then you're going to interpret life based on the experiences that you've had. But there's a lot more experiences out there, and I'm not saying we recommend we see all those or experience all of those, but we can only interpret life based on the experiences that we have, other than supernaturally, and that certainly can happen. It's called a cognitive bias, or for the sake of the study, it's also called a filter. And I think somebody taught on that. Tim taught on it before. He taught on filters basically in terms of the lenses, right? You had a professor, maybe you just read the story. You read a story about a professor that came into a classroom and he had red glasses on. Thick bottle red glasses. Ridiculously red glasses. He walked in and the students all looked at him and he says, okay, let's start reading this passage and let's start. And he had not introduced himself. That's the first time I've ever seen him. And finally he looks up and says, hey, something's wrong. Something's wrong here. You're all red, if I remember the story. And they're all looking at each other like, oh, he's got glasses on. He's got red glasses. And so finally some student raises his hand, well, sir, you have red glasses on. That's why your red glasses red. And he says, exactly. He took his glasses off and said, and my job is to help you take your glasses off so that you can see the whole picture, not just through the lens that you've learned. You may come back to that lens. You want to see everything red, but for now, you're going to learn. So this next image, this next video is really short, but it's about misunderstandings. So I'm going to show you a funny misunderstanding, one that I could have done, and I would probably be known for. But here's a misunderstanding that took place. It took place. Let's see. There's no sound. Okay, set up a nice dinner. There's a cat in the house. So what do you think she thought?
You did!
You thought he was killing the cat? What was on the floor? Blood, yeah. Yeah. I've actually thought those thoughts. But anyways, I digress. The cat's not in the house anymore. Hallelujah. Oh. But an easy misunderstanding, right there, it could take place. And it would be based on, not really even on a filter, it's just based on the evidence that they see. But does she have all the evidence?
No.
She doesn't have all, we did, right? Because we saw the whole story. So we understood, but outside of that, if you only had a picture of that, which is all she had, you would be easy to assume, oh, he's killing the cat.
Justifiably so.
We'll pray for you, Mike. So I'm going to read a couple passages. Well, I don't have to read these. Somebody else read these for me. But 1 Corinthians 10, 3-6. Mike, will you read that?
For though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds.
Strongholds, okay. And I like the way this is worded in the ESV. That's why I chose this. But so that begs the question. I'm on pins and needles like, what are the strongholds? What are the strongholds? This is what it says. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Messiah. So that's important because arguments, opinions, and thoughts. Opinions are thoughts. Arguments come from thoughts. So this is about our thoughts. The strongholds can be our thoughts. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Just a little bit how that works. Now, how do we fulfill this verse? How do we destroy those strongholds? This is not a long study, by the way. I didn't take all the time that I would like to take in for a study like this. But that's okay. It's been a busy couple weeks. Has anyone else had a busy couple of weeks? It's springtime. There's things that need to be done, but that's all right. The Spirit is alive and well, so let's continue. So here's a story. Let me ask you a quick question. Everybody knows the story by looking at it. What misunderstanding or what filters were in place that gave different opinions? And who had taken those thoughts, strongholds, and who hadn't?
Joshua and Caleb took, in a sense, it was a battle of perspectives. In many ways, like it is today, but the other 10 were looking at the giants compared to them, and Joshua and Caleb looked at the giants compared to Yahweh.
Yes, beautifully well said. Did anybody of the 12 spies, did anyone disagree that the land was good?
No.
They all agreed the land was good.
Nor did they dispute that there were giants.
I think you're right. But only the 10 spies said that we appear to be grasshoppers to them. And I think that was their perspective of how because when we go to the walls of Jericho, we don't even read about the giants, but there were giants in the land. And I'm going to guess they saw 5 giants and a whole bunch of regular people, perhaps, and all I could remember was the giants. Right? It's possible. It's possible.
Well, it kind of sounded like the tale spread around the camp too, and as tales as they tend to do, got bigger and bigger as they went. So the whole land might have been
20.
Well, you touched on something, and that's some of our human nature. And I don't know why. I have a lot of questions when I get to heaven, and one of those is going to be, why did you make us the way you made us? Because we have a tendency to believe the bad news much more than we have a tendency to believe the good news. 2 spies gave the good news. So we can win because of him. And 10 looked at their strength and said, no, we can't. They can't with who they believe. The negative. And I think if it would have been 11 good reports and 1 negative report, it would have been the same result. Because we cleaved to the bad reports. So that was a case in which their lenses, and you have to remember, were these the lowest of the lows of Israel that were chosen to be the spies? No. They were chosen leaders, people that were spiritual. And they came back and they were swayed to believe that they could not win. That Yahweh would not fight for them. My goodness, what had just happened? Who had they just been delivered from? Well, wait a minute. Yeah, just a moment ago. It wasn't 40 years ago, it was, yeah, the Egyptians. But what are we to say? We have all these great examples, and we still struggle. All right, let's continue. This is a story of Paul and Silas in prison. And I like this picture, even though it says godsalt.com. I couldn't get that out of there. But because it shows them as well being beaten, and they may very well have been. And I like it. So does it look like they're crying?
No.
It's like they're crying out.
Crying out? What else are they doing?
Praising.
They're singing and praising, and I love it because let's read that. Somebody read this. Amy, will you read that?
Around midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening. Suddenly there was a massive earthquake, and the prison was shaken to its foundations. All the doors immediately flew open, and the chains of every prisoner fell off. The jailer woke up to see the prison doors wide open. He assumed the prisoners had escaped, so he drew his sword to kill himself. But Paul shouted to him, "Stop, don't kill yourself, we're all here." The jailer called for lights and ran to the dungeon and fell down trembling before Paul and Silas. Then he brought them out and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?"
I love this. I love this passage. Because, I mean, I never saw it before until I was doing this, but basically, yeah, the prisoners are listening. And keep in mind, you have an audience wherever you go. And a lot of times today it's being recorded too. But there's an audience paying attention to how we react to things. This is basically how are they reacting. And they reacted differently. They were singing. They weren't cursing. And actually, it says they were praying too, yeah. Praying and singing. But it's been interesting because the jailer is saved and the prisoner chains fell off. And I think that might even be considered a possibility that they were also set free spiritually and when having been in bondage. It's a possibility. We don't know. We don't get the chance to read about all of their lives and how they are changed. But I love that because there's a change there, and that's what I want to talk about a little bit. It's called framing. It's called framing. So basically, it would be like saying, okay, Paul and Silas, I'm thrown in jail. And if this is the whole picture of what Yahweh is doing, but if this is all they're focused on, well, these chains hurt, I'm bleeding, there's rats in here, and what in the world, Father, I was serving you and this is my reward? But that's not what they focused on. Did they know they was going to be delivered?
No.
We don't read any, but they focused on, we're going to sing praises anyway. And little did they know, because they looked at their situation, they cut all that out and they worshipped in prison. And as a result, they changed the world. I would dare say that they were full of joy in the midst of a trial. So we're gonna play a little game here. And it kind of goes like this. It's about framing. How do we frame our situation in our day? How do we frame, how do we think? And how does that compare in our lives? And this is a challenge for all of us. But I would say that is a beautiful road. Would you agree that's a beautiful road? Mike, did you see any roads that beautiful on your trip?
I've got pictures on my phone that look very similar.
Yeah, is that right? And gorgeous? I mean, it's just beautiful out. I don't see any gas stations.
Yeah.
That would maybe, but we'll just pretend there's one around the curve because that's supposed to be a beautiful, perfect setting. All right. All of a sudden, somebody put a pothole in the road. And that's a fairly good sized one. Now it's centered in between the wheels so there's nobody really getting an accident, but there's a pothole there. And let's say you're on a beautiful road like that, and you stop somebody just a mile down the road. What do you think they would talk about?
I don't know.
Pothole.
That pothole. I just barely missed that pothole. It was a deep one too. But I don't think they'd be speaking about the beautiful road. But is that road we just saw better than this road?
On your car, maybe.
Well, yeah, it's a good point. This is beautiful scenery, but it's certainly for traveling. And what I want to do is I want to compare this then to, say, wherever you live, however you got here today, consider the journey that you took to get here compared to what we're looking at now. So you would, however you've driven far, however far you've driven, the whole way was like this, okay? You're going to get dusty, right? But, and I think it might be single lane, I'm not sure. But it's less than as good as the other one. I dare say you probably wouldn't want to do 65. I was on a, well, the next picture would be one with washboard then. My cousins had motorcycles and what we call tri-rods and snowmobiles, and occasionally we'd get together with them and me and my brothers would go over and wreck everything they have. And they took me down some dirt road, I think it was Town Line Road now that I think about it, and I was on a little mini bike kind of a thing, and I don't know what I'm doing, so just go as fast as I can, right? And pretty soon it's going like, I'm waving all around, kind of like you did in the wind. I'm just going back and forth, and I'm like, because the wheels aren't really on the road, they're doing this on the washboard, and I realized really quickly you will lose control if you don't slow down. But yeah, washboards, those are nasty. Well, at least the previous picture, there's no washboards there, so that's a better road than this. Can you imagine taking that all the way here? Okay. Could you do it? You could actually get here, but it would be difficult. And then this one is even, there's no road signs. It's not, there might be a boulder in the road. It might be rattlesnakes. Yeah. It's continuing, no gas stations, right. But at least you can get there. Could you get there? You can get here, right? Okay.
With some water.
With some water. Okay. What about this one? Do you see a road? There's no road there. But that's how this nation was. That's how, here there was no roads. But could you walk someplace? You could walk. But could you walk here? How long would that take you? Several days, right? At that point. Oregon Trail. So now we've dropped down. Now we're only into the local group here. And then this is thickets and bogs. That's no fun. That's hard to get through. Has anyone ever gotten caught in a thicket before? I did one time. I was hunting on my grandmother's property, and I was taking a shortcut across the cow pasture in the dark, and I forgot there's cows in there. And I'm not a farm boy, so I think cows are out to kill me, right? So all of a sudden I hear hooves, and they're chasing me down. I run, I got a bow in my hand, but I'm running for all I'm worth, and I throw my bow over the fence, and I jump over the fence just before the cows get there, land in the thicket, briar patch. On my back, and I can't move. And there's 5 cows looking at me, and I think they were laughing. It took me a while to pry myself out of that. Then there's always like the fire swamp, right? Yeah. Now, how far did they go in the fire swamp? It was all the way through, but I don't know how far it was. But they were brave soldiers, yeah. And then, the ROUSs, right? Rodents of unusual size. But they even had a path that they could get through, but you're walking. But even if you're walking, you come to a limit. So even the Danburys, if that was between us, we'd probably just have to Skype. It is pretty. Right. So that brings us back then. My point being that What was my point? My point was... It'll probably come to me. Tazria, birth and nurture good thoughts. So that's my, where I want to go with this is Tazria means to conceive. And what I want to do is I want to say this study is about taking captive our thoughts and birthing good thoughts in our own minds and how we can do that. So the first one is to thank, that's where it was. Thank Yahweh for what didn't happen. So none of that happened to any of us. And if you frame it differently, and I might have put it, if you would frame that differently for your little frame, you would say, okay, at least it's not a cliff, right? There's a pothole, but there's not a cliff. At least it's not a washboard. At least. When you've seen and experienced all those things, you can realize, I can be grateful. And even if you have the washboard road, you can at least walk. But the woods, you could get lost in, or the fire swamp's going to eat you alive. So I would say there's only 3 of these I'm going to go over. One is to thank Yahweh for what didn't happen. And so sometimes we have to imagine, well, what could have happened? I went to the dentist. Well, he didn't pull out all my teeth. Just pulled one. That was a good day. There's always a way that we can frame our situation to be grateful. And I dare say that's what the Paul and Silas did. Let's continue on. Then there's something called pre-framing. And it would be like this. So let's say I'm going to go to work today, and I know what I have to do today. Today is a BERM, business unit report metrics. Melanie knows I hate BERM days. I'm going to have to drink my own medicine now, but BERM day that's BERM day, I'm telling you. Okay? But it's like, I don't even look forward to these days because I feel I have to waste so much time, but I have to give this report that they feel is important, so I will do it. That's how my day starts sometimes. And sometimes the day I go out the door and the stars are snuffed out of the sky and nothing goes right, and my perspective is already messed up. Or it could be, then I go to work. And I could go to work and say, well, I'm going to give the best report I possibly can because I'm working as unto the Lord. And I want to be a good representative of Him. And I want to make my boss look good. I want to make him look really good. These are all things that we could do. Or it could be here. It could be about a friend. Well, I got this friend going through this hard time. They brought it on themselves. They're probably going to fail on this because they have in the past. I don't even know if I'm going to reach out to them. But maybe I've reached out to them in the past before and I've prayed for them. And I have other people praying for them. And maybe I could believe them and believe in them differently than I have. Maybe they're learning. Maybe my children, I get frustrated because they're not keeping Yahweh's ways, my married children or whatever. But then I think, well, wait a minute. How many years did Yahweh work on me before He even took the time to send anybody to teach me about Sabbath? Changes things. So that's called pre-framing. So you can set the way you're going to think about somebody or something or a situation based on how you look at it to begin with. And then I'll give you another example of pre-framing, what you can do with that. So this guy right here is getting crunched. He was a quarterback before he got hit. And I've shared this story with you guys a little bit in the past, but for me, I learned a life lesson when I was 14. How many here are younger than 14? Is anyone here younger than 14? Okay, yeah. The Father He will teach you life lessons at this age if you'll listen. Absolutely will. And anyone older, He certainly will. Life lesson for me. 14 years old. We're playing White Pigeon, my nemesis. I've talked about it before. But the game is tight. No, we're behind 8-0. And I'm being a good quarterback. I'm trained to do what I'm doing. I'm taking the ball, I'm getting the hike, and I'm giving it to somebody else to run the ball because these guys are going to crunch them. But I give it to him, and then he's running with it, and I continue with a fake, like I have the ball, and I go back like I'm going to pass, and 2 or 3 guys will tackle me, and I don't have the ball. But they didn't get to tackle the guy who had the ball, so I carried out that's been going on all the game long, and I'm hurting, and it's been a long day, and still we don't have any points. But at one point in the game, we're right in the middle of the field, 50-yard line, and coach calls for a pass, and I talked with one of my guys, and he said, hey, I'm opening up the middle every time. He was really fast. No, he's really fast. Todd Ladd, I think was it? No, Brandon McCaw. He was really fast. He couldn't catch for the hoop, but he was really fast. But he was one of my receivers, and so I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I'm just going to go back my 9 drops, and I'm going to throw you the ball if you're open. So I'm running, take the ball, and I'm running for my life. 9 steps back, turn. Apparently my linemen were tired too and sore. Because when I turned around, there was 2 guys barreling in on me, one here and one here. And again, I'm 14 years old. Turn, and I see these guys barreling in on me, but I see Brendan's head above these 2 burly guys. I go, I think I have time to get this ball off. I turn, throw it for onward, and it was just like that. But there's one guy here, and there's another guy below him, and they hit me really, really hard. And I went down, and I laid on the ground, and I said, I'm done. I'm not getting up. They can carry me off this field. I am done. I had quit. Then I heard the crowd scream and holler. And I thought, what happened? They intercepted the ball? But it was my side that was screaming and hollering. And I looked up, and he's doing the dance in the end zone. And all of a sudden, I could get up. Because we had a 2-point conversion that we had to get in order to get this game tied up 8-8. And I ran down the field. Well, I limped down the field, and I had tears streaming down my face. And my lineman asked me, are you okay? I said, well, yeah, I am now. And we got the 2-point conversion, and we tied the game 8-8, and it finished 8-8. And we finished the season 6-1-1. That was our only tie. And that was my 4-year career. That's my best record. Centerville wasn't the best football team in the world, but it was fun. We did have a good time. But that was a life lesson for me because I learned from that, and it's carried me through my whole life because my dad pointed it out. And maybe I wouldn't have learned it without my dad. But he said, most quarterbacks would have took that ball and dropped on a knee or tried to run for the life. You hung yourself out there and you exposed your ribs, and that hurt. And you laid it out there just like that. And they didn't have these wonderful flak jackets and stuff like that back then. It just hurt. But the life lesson that I had was that pain and short-sightedness. See, it would have been short-sightedness for me to say, I'm going to protect mine. Forget about the game. I'm going to make it through the day. Pain and short-sightedness does not define me. But vision and victory does. The only reason I threw that ball is because I was worried about the team. I wanted us to win. And so the Father has continued to give me vision, a bigger vision than just for David. When we built this house, I could never have built this house if I didn't have that 14-year-old life lesson. That I could see, okay, it'll be tough right now, but in 3 years, well, no, I told her 9 months. She says it's 6 months, but it doesn't matter. It was still 4 years. 4 years later, we finished the house. Well, we moved in. We didn't finish the house, but we moved in 4 years later. Hallelujah. But I had no idea what he wanted to do, and that's carried me through life. And that is part of what I was going over, which was pre-framing. The Father has used that situation in my life to help me from evermore be able, and consequently that's where the vision of GMD2 comes from. It comes from, I wouldn't have that vision. I would not be willing to pursue that vision if the 14-year-old didn't get clobbered. Yeah, absolutely. And so I believe it's going to happen in His time. So when we have a vision of what the Father's made us for, it helps us to define and to frame things properly. That He's not done with me yet. He's still working in my life, and He's using all things for good. Hallelujah. And then the last thing is look for Yah's goodness. When we consider the thoughts that we conceive, the Tazria, the things that we're birthing in our mind and in our actions, let's look for Yah's good. And this is the example I want to use. What is this? A vulture. What do vultures eat? Carry on. Dead things. Things that smell. Death. And Yahweh's made them, alright, He's made them, and they have a purpose, and they're not a delicacy, like basically the seafood version of that is considered. Shrimp would be basically wet vultures. Crabs.
That's a good way to put it.
But they fly around looking for death. They look for things that stink. And they will find it. They have good eyesight and they have good smell. And basically what I'm going with this is that we will find what we're looking for. We will find what we're looking for. Because this is a hummingbird. Have you ever seen one mowing on a dead deer along the road? No. But they find the honey. Not the honey, I said honey. They're not honeybirds. They find the nectar, right? They find the nectar. They find the sweetness. Matter of fact, you can lure them with sugar. That's why we do it, with sugar, water. Later this summer, you'll see them out on the porch. But the idea is that you'll find what you're looking for. And if you're looking for the sweetness in others or in a situation, you will find it. There is something good to be said about everything. Now, my wife has a motto right now, and I love it. And she needs to apply it more to me, I think. But we'll let that go for now. It is expect nothing and appreciate everything. So if we go back to that road that we saw, if we expected there to be a cliff, and I can't get to sitting on a hill because there's a cliff there. If we expect nothing and we find out, well, wait a minute. It's just the woods, and I can get there. Eventually, I can mark the way. It might take me 3 days. I might have to build a cabin on the way or a dugout canoe. But if we expect nothing, we can be grateful when we get anything. And so if we look for the goodness, we can find it. If we look for the badness in things or in people, we will certainly find that as well. So in 2020, if you talk to most people, they will say, even if you talk to me, because I'm prone this way too, it was not a great year. And many of us are glad it's over. It still carries on to some degree. There's things still happening in this. We're not otherwise, but I think all of us can see the light now at the end of the tunnel. Concerning COVID and lockdowns and situations, and even, some of us have lost people, some of us have people that are still sick, and there's 14 people out at Brookville right now with COVID. But there's some good things that happened in 2020, and that's what I want to look at, because I would like to focus on the good. I want to be the hummingbird. So if we look at the bad, we see lockdowns, political problems, presidential problems, loss of freedoms, loss of income, you name it. Loss of loved ones, friendships that have been frayed. Or we could look at some other things, because did you know that they're saying now that they believe that there were more people that have come to Yeshua in 2020 than in any year previous, on account of the persecution, on account of the need. I'm not sure if that's accurate. I'm not sure how you measure something like that, but they do believe that. And something that Melanie and I talked about is we gave it, we overwhelmed Amy. Sorry, Amy. We're looking for a theme we talked about for Shavuot. And so, well, we're looking for a dance song and a theme for that as well. And so we have sent Amy, I think 23 now. Maybe 24, 20, might be 25 is the last email. Different possible songs that would all be fitting for Shavuot. And do you know why? Because we're so blessed. There has been this huge outpouring in the last 2 years of almost outpouring or anointing of Yahweh's people. The songs are anointed. They're beautiful. They are worthy to be sung in the chambers of the Most High. And we'll probably hear them again someday. We have artists now, Big Daddy Weave, Corey Joe, Jeremy Camp, David Crowder, Hillsong, Elevation Worship, Mercy Me, Jesus Culture, Danny Goki, Phil Wickham, Lauren Daigle, Zach Williams and King Country now doing things with Dolly Parton. Unbelievable. Need to Breathe, Jordan Feliz, Chris Tomlin, Colton Dixon, and there's many more. And I remember, and I know Diana remembers and Melanie remembers, boy, back in the day when we were young, I'm still young, but back when I was younger, we were blessed with Christian artists too, but basically you had Petra, and you had Striper,
Amy Grant.
Yeah. Leslie Phillips.
Leslie Phillips. There wasn't very many, but there was some, and we're grateful for what we had.
Servant.
Yes, servant. But now, these people, it's just amazing. And this is something that's been fruited. I don't know if it's been fruited from the situation or if it's just been Yahweh's, hey, I know you're hurting. Let me give you some salve. Yeah, Melody.
Since you're talking about them anyway, if anybody wants to see Danny Goki, my mom said he's going to be at First Assembly in Battle Creek shortly here
Really?
in May. Yeah.
Sweet.
So.
If you find any actual hard information on that, I would forward them. Yeah. So I want to finish with, let's don't conceive the goodness of Yahweh through our circumstances. So, okay, here's our circumstance. Is Yahweh done anything with it? But rather, let's say Yahweh is good. How can these circumstances be from Him? Or how can He be, how is He involved in these? And if we don't see it, let's assume it. Not only that, but let's assume it also in Ben. Let's assume it in Mike. And Diana. And Ron. And Holly. That the Father's working in them too. And He's anointed them in a certain way. And even if we don't see things exactly the same way, they're still a brother and they're a sister. And are gifted in different ways. And that my filter may not fully understand. So I'm just going to assume the best. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and consider them brothers and sisters. And we will learn from that. So Tazria, she shall conceive. Let's take into captivity our thoughts. Let's conceive good things in the Father. Let's change the way we frame things. Let's think of that example. If nothing else, if you don't know how to pray, how can I be grateful? Because I'm not being grateful today, and I don't have a grateful heart. How can I be grateful? Think, how could it be worse? Mm-hmm. And pretty soon you can be grateful. And I can be grateful.
I've been cheated, mistreated, and verbally abused. I've been laughed at and attacked by those who persecute. I am imperfect, inconsistent. Sometimes I blow my fuse. You see right through. You see the heart in me, and not this stubborn disguise. You see what lies beneath. I've been razzled, bedazzled, overtaken by desire. I've been shaken, mistaken, and hung out on a wire. I've been distressful, unsuccessful, and caught up in the fire. But you see right through. You see the heart in me, and not this pepper disguise. You see what lies beneath the mistakes I have to find. Let your heart be established in me, yeah, yeah, so the whole world can see. Let your love flow like a river in me, yeah, yeah, let the whole world believe. Let your heart be established in me, yeah, yeah, so the whole world can see. Let your love flow like a river in me, yeah, yeah, let the whole world believe. You see the heart in me, I'm not this pepper in disguise. You see what lies beneath the mistakes I have compiled. You see the heart in me, and not this pepper in disguise. You see what lies beneath the mistakes I have compiled. And not this pepper disguise.